Hey everyone, welcome to a new video. If you are new to this YouTube channel, please do subscribe, hit the bell button, leave a like. Now, premium members, there's loads of new people in, so the benefit of everyone, on a Monday we publish this on YouTube. So if you're on YouTube, in terms of if you do become a premium member, link below, this is how you get in, right? We have 3 Telegram channels. We have a daily analysis, which is where these videos go, so step number 1. And then we have 2 others. We have a VIP support chat, which is very important. People support. So people who paid memberships get the support. So if you've got any issues, any problems with anything, we can help you out as a community. We've got loads of people now. And optional, if you want to get into trading, there's a trading room as well. And even more so, there's a trading indicator and all kinds of stuff. And loads of content, as well as a nice little cheeky discount on all courses. But let's talk about the market, because we've had a bit of a sluggish weekend. People are a bit panicky, but there's been a lot of good news coming out, essentially coming throughout the market in itself. So you're seeing obviously Dubai funds potentially looking at focusing on the likes of Polkadot, Cardano examples. You know, we've got a lot of information regarding Cardano. In terms of Ethereum, this is great news. Obviously you can see here, yay. Obviously people panicking because of obviously the news of Ethereum. But if we go over to the bullish news, essentially, there's still a lot of good stuff. I can't see how that is bullish. Anyways, but overall, a lot of people are, you know, a little bit, if you're new, I understand why people are panicking, because you may have just bought into Bitcoin at like 50, 55K, for example, right? And then obviously it dumps. And for me, as an educator, as a YouTuber as well, I see both ends. I see both ends of the stick. I get a lot of people who love this sort of stuff, and I see a lot of people that don't like this sort of stuff. So you've got to be careful. But the whole idea is basically don't buy the top. Essentially, do not buy the top. So always dollar cost average in, always figure out a way. And a dip is a dip. Don't just buy little bits and bobs here and there at whatever interval. Just be strategic. Be strategic and find where days are like yesterday. Every weekend seems to be a good buying day. But let's talk about what's actually happening in the market. So the one I want to focus on more this morning, or today essentially, is reserve rights, because it's doing a really good bounce. There's a lot of good fundamental news coming out around it. Certainly when you think about March and Venezuela and all kinds of stuff like that. If we're looking at like a top to bottom analysis, essentially, we've had a monster move now. You know, it's still in a monster uptrend, and if we're looking at potential levels now, if we're talking about dips, by the way, if we're looking at that as a potential area in terms of, you know, people panicking a little bit in terms of how this dipped so much. So this is essentially the start of the move, in my opinion. So we've had an impulse, it pulled back a little bit essentially in and around this region, but this is like the start of the move, isn't it? Let's be honest. So going back a step though, we had one here, right? We had one here, impulse, pulled back, right? Now we can look at this one as an overall full bodily structure, right? Let's just talk about this one. What has actually happened is we hit this top level here and we pulled back over a period of 2 weeks, down all the way down to 3.4 cents, right? Huge levels in and around where this previous level was, where this, you know, liquidity grab was, and already this morning off we shoot, right? So we've had a great little dip buy, and this is what I was talking about, buying dips. When you look on like the 2-day chart and you look at like the daily chart as well, you know, people like look at this, go, oh my god, it's just dying, but boom, still somewhat in a downtrend essentially, you can argue, but it's showing signs of life, which is always good to see, especially when you think where people were buying. This was number of 618 taps in and around this level, which is always important when you start looking at where this kind of move took off. So if we're talking about analysis and looking at certain things, if we're looking on like say the 3-day chart, for example, you can see it very, very clearly that this is a very, very important level, which in some way we should really just mark it up as a potential level. And then look at other levels as well in and around this region. So for me, looking at the likes of this, the reason why I'm saying looking at this level is because we've had multiple wick taps in and around this level in terms of these two, and obviously levels in and around where it is right now. So current prices, this is where we're at, current live pricing, which is always important. And obviously you can go a little bit further down as well if you so wish to. You can look at like this level where the wicks are in and around that 786 level, numerous taps essentially. So when we start removing some of the noise, This is kind of the structure that we've got essentially, which is always good to see. So when we start talking about market levels and structure, you know, when we start looking at the daily, we can kind of see in a lot more detail what's actually happening. Breakout above this level is a great move, obviously. It can start the trend, but when you start looking at it and putting trend lines on all this sort of stuff, you could probably argue that, well, actually, are we in some sort of bullish trend still? Well, you could probably argue that essentially if you're looking at that. Essentially, taps numerous of liquidity grabs in and around that region, looking likely to get sent. The biggest fundamental thing, and we need to do analysis of this, like this is the messiest chart you'll ever see. Look at it. This is, in my opinion, I feel like it's like suppressed in a way. I feel that there's a lot of information that we need to look at, but the biggest bit and drawing point of this information is obvious, right? If we start looking at where this kind of level is, we've had numerous taps in and around this region. So when you look at body closures and stuff like that, numerous levels wicking into this region, but we've never actually gone above it. This is from literally 18th of September 2020. It's still looking pretty interesting, and you could probably argue on here we can draw another line. If we're just looking at specific areas, it's just ridiculous when you look at how many closures and wick closures in and around a region, and that's all we got in terms of all that. This is in a huge sort of consolidation area where it's been faking out numerous times but failing. It needs to go above it. So this could be the start of the move. So from this level here, this could be the start of the move. We could be retracing on the BTC pair a little bit, and then we may well go for a retest, but we need to wait and see. So this is like the start of it essentially, you know, when we think about it, but still forming a little bit of a downtrend essentially in this period here where it's like formed a low. But we'll see what happens. If this forms a higher low, it may well be the time to kind of look at potentially, you know, this actually getting enough juice to go for it as a proper run. So basically what we'll be looking for is a support level, maybe in and around this region where it's kind of a lot of confluence with certain levels. So we can kind of look at this region essentially for a potential launch pad from that point, and we'll see what happens. So fingers crossed, good fundamentals, good stuff happens, and we start to get a little bit of a penetration from that level and go above this level for the first time, but we'll see. It's a very interesting dynamic to think that this is not broken out yet, but March is coming. There's a lot of fundamental news regarding it in March. Let's look at the dominance chart again. It's messy, I know. Looking at it, it's looking likely it is going to fall again. 2-day chart looking pretty good. 3-day chart not so bad, but the weekly, you know, what the weekly close was pretty, in my opinion, pretty bearish, because we've zipped all the way back down again. We've had numerous levels of, you know, not so much conflicting views, but it's sort of like indecision essentially when you think about it in terms of how this market has been driven and the way that we think, well, Bitcoin's a lot higher than it's been in the past and we're already looking at higher levels, but this hasn't melted yet, and I think it will be very, very soon. If Ethereum gets its, you know, its breakout essentially sorted, if the likes of RSR does well and people start jumping into things, and obviously the likes of Polkadot and all the bigger cap coins get moved, because they are, in some ways, some of them are undervalued, we'll see this coming down and people just jump into the altcoin opportunities essentially. So we've got to be careful, but for me, it's still looking quite good. Strategically take profits, as we know. So I looked at my portfolio recently, and I said this in the VIP chat that like 3-4 weeks ago, I was at my highest for the year in dollar value, right? Highest of the year. But now when I look at my portfolio today, I'm at the highest I've been in BTC for the year. So it depends on what you go for, and obviously if you've been following me for a while, you'll know that I'm predominantly collecting Satoshis because it makes more sense. But the fundamentals are clear. I'm thinking long term. I think that the hedge against the economic machine is always going to be better. So that's why I always look for that. Looking at other levels, especially on Total 2, we've had a nice correction. We seem to be pulling back up again, but we'll see what happens. The money flow seems to be going back into the market again every single weekend. It seems to happen, but we need to make sure that we form, you know, that trend analysis, that trend setting that we are going to continue going to the upside. When we look at the likes of, for me, when I look at this, I'm thinking this is like disgusting. Look at it. Like, I think I put this on my YouTube yesterday. saying that this is a potential demand area. If this moons from this point, it could be very interesting because it is still in a nice uptrend. It's still forming a section of higher highs, higher lows and stuff like that. It's continuously doing its thing. It needs to just continue. If this creates a high, by the way, just to let you know, this is a monster move and this will definitely shake down the dominance massively. If that's a 65% move from this point, that is a monster difference in value of Ethereum, and we'll see over 2k Ethereum very, very quickly, and it'll look very, very neat and tidy on the chart especially. So that's all I've got to say really today. Lots of things happening obviously, but just trade safe. Level of demand for obvious reasons, in my opinion, for Ethereum, definitely in and around this region, as you can kind of see, demand area. We'll see what happens.